Hi, I'm going to show you how to put your paper onto another piece of paper here with masking tape. This is watercolor paper. It is a very thick paper, as you can see, even more thick than cardstock. And you can also see that it has a bumpy texture on it. It has a tooth to it. And so this is what we use when we paint with watercolor. And you're going to be not gluing it, using masking tape to adhere it to a piece of manila paper. It is better to tape it down to cardboard or a wood panel, but we don't have enough of those for everybody, so we are going to just tape it down to manila paper. All right, so before you tape it down, actually, you're going to use a pencil and you're going to write your first name and last name, first and last names. Okay, you're going to write your name and then you're going to write your period. Okay, so whatever period you're in. Okay, that goes on the back of your paper. So then that's done. So when your project is done and you're peeling off the tape and you take off your project, at the end, your name and period is already on the back. Then you're going to flip it over. Okay, so name and period on the back, flip it over and center it onto the manila paper. So see how it's centered? This camera view is expanded as far as it can go, and it unfortunately is too small to fit the whole thing. But you can see my watercolor paper is nearly perfect, centered into the middle of the manila paper. Okay, next thing you're going to do is take some masking tape. And here's what you do. You take the tape and you go like this, and you measure how long it needs to be before you put it down. So don't put it down. Okay, so just measure how long it needs to be. I know it needs to be this long. And then tear it off at the part where you measured. Okay, now before you can put your tape down, you have to make it less sticky. It is way too sticky. And the way to make it less sticky is to put this on your clothing and then peel it back off your clothing. It gets the lint from your clothing on the sticky side and it makes it less sticky. That way it's not going to tear our paper when we peel it back up. Okay, so I'm going to put this on my jeans right now. You can't see my jeans right now, but I put the tape on my jeans and I peeled it back up. And now look at all that lint. Whoa, so much lint. Okay, so basically I'll do it on my arm here. You're putting it on your clothing. I didn't put it on my arm before because my shirt that I'm wearing today is not linty at all, so it doesn't actually work. So I did it on my jeans instead. And then you peel it off your clothes. If you're wearing a cotton t-shirt, you can put it on your t-shirt. That should make it nice and linty. Jeans work really, really well. You can see tons of lint on there from my dark wash jeans. Okay? And once you've got that lint layer on your tape, here's what you do. You're going to put it as best as you can halfway onto the watercolor paper and halfway onto the manila paper. So it's not perfect. It's just you're eyeballing it. You're not measuring, you're just eyeballing it. It's roughly half the tape is about on the watercolor paper and about half the tape is up here on the manila paper. So you want to do it about halfway. This is 1-inch tape. So we're going to get a 1/2-inch border by putting it halfway on the watercolor tape, halfway on the manila tape. Okay, and you're going to do that on all 4 sides. So now I'll do this side. Pull the tape out, measure how long it needs to be. Once you've measured how long it needs to be, tear it at that point. Put the tape on your clothes. I just put it on my jeans. See the lint? And then I'm putting it halfway. So you hover it. Before you stick it down, hover it, and you can see through the tape. See how you can see through it? It's not stuck down yet. It's just hovering. You can see through the tape. You can see it's about halfway onto the watercolor paper, halfway onto the manila paper. Once you eyeball it like that, while it's hovering, then you smooth it down. Okay. Again, it's not perfect, but it's roughly half an inch onto the watercolor paper. Okay, I'm going to do the third side now, measuring how long it needs to be first, tearing it off at that point, sticking the tape all the way onto my jeans, all the way across it. Got the lint layer on there, hovering it now over before I stick it down, I'm hovering it, and you can see it's not stuck yet. Hovering, and you can see through the tape. So you can see it's halfway on the watercolor paper, halfway off onto the manila. And last side now, this is the fourth edge. Measure how long it needs to be. Tear it off at that point. Stick it onto my jeans. Peel it back off. There's the lint layer. And last side, I'm hovering it before I stick it down. I see it's roughly halfway, and then I'm smoothing it down. Okay, last thing you're going to do after you tape it down is put your name. This is the top right corner of the manila paper. Now, while you're working on your project, I can't see your name and period on the back of the watercolor paper, right? It's there for when the project is done. But while you're working on it, I still need to know whose is whose and be able to see to give them back to you each day. So here you're also going to put your first and last name. And then you're going to put your period. This way, because we're going to put these, there's going to be watercolor paint on it, which is wet. And so each day you're going to put it on the drying rack at the end of class. And I need to know which period you're in to make sure they don't get mixed up. Each period will use their own side of the drying rack, but still, just in case you put your project on the wrong side of the drying rack or the wrong drying rack altogether, at least I can see what period you're in so I can find it on the drying rack and give it back to you.
Tyler Everson, please
Sorry,
report
they're
to the main
doing
office.
announcements
Tyler
during
Everson,
my
please
video.
report to the main office.
Can't control that. Okay, that's what you're doing for the first step of the project. That's it. That's done. That's pretty much what we're all just going to be doing on the first day of the project. Okay, then the next day of the project, you will be using two kinds of Sharpies. Okay, you're going to use, this is a fine point Sharpie and this is an extra fine point Sharpie. So I'll take the caps off so you can see the difference. This one can give you a little bit of a thicker line. This one gives you a nice skinny line. Okay, so we're going to take the Sharpie. This is our first day. And we're going to start at the edge. Remember, every neurographic line that you draw is going to go start from off the page and end off the page. Okay, I'm not going to think about it too much. I'm just going to curve and twist and go around and go off the page, right? Then I'm going to start again somewhere else off the page. I'll start from here, come back on, do some more curves, some more twists, and end up off the page again. Okay, that was two big lines. I'm going to start another. I'm going to start over here, do another curve, more of these curvy lines, and end up off the page again. Okay, that was three lines. Now I'll do a fourth. And this time I'm going to do this one a little bit bumpier because I've been doing smooth lines. I don't really have any super bumpy lines. So I'm going to do some bumpy ones. And then maybe, so it went all the way off the page again, right to the edge there. Okay. And I'll start another one up here, another bumpy one. Remember, we don't want to do a pattern to this. This should be random. Okay. It shouldn't be, like my waves shouldn't be totally regular and straight in a pattern. So that's why I'm kind of going in different directions. I think I'll do another one over here with this. I'm mixing my smooth curved lines with these bumpy curved lines. Okay. I think that's pretty good for now. Okay. Then after that, you can either use the circle template, which I did not bring here with me right now, but you don't have to use the circle template. And you can add circles on top of these lines with a template, or you can do it freehand. So I'm just going to freehand it since I don't have the circle template with me. Here is the start of a circle, right? Go, and if it was a whole circle, it would be like this, but obviously it goes off the page. Okay. I can do a bit of a smaller circle here, just doing these freehand. But you don't have to just do circles. If you wanted to have a rectangle in there, I think I'll do a rounded rectangle, something with rounded edges like this, kind of like that. If you want to do triangles, that's fine too. I'm doing rounded edges rather than sharp edges, just because rounded edges feel more calm to me than sharp edges. Okay, you can do as many shapes around the composition as you want. All right, so shapes is the last step after doing lines. Okay, so now I've got all my lines, I've got enough shapes. Remember that you can, so I filled up the whole page, right? But let me grab another piece of paper here, just show you real quick another option. Here, I'll do 2 pieces of paper so you can't see through it as well. Okay, so another option, rather than filling up the entire space, I went from corner to corner, edge to edge with all these lines, is to leave a little bit of negative space. You don't want too much negative space. You want to have just enough that it adds to the composition. Maybe I turn my paper this way for this. Remember from the videos that we watched, all those examples where it kind of looked like a tree, right? So they had like lines starting here and then coming up this way, and then starting here and coming up this way. And then they had all these other tons and tons of lines like this. Right? And they filled up the whole thing with lines, but they left this space and this space white. One of the examples, it had some gray, like smoky neurographic lines back here, but it was still mostly negative space, mostly white. So that's an option too. You can leave some white negative space in your composition so that it's not fully filled to every part of the edge with lines and shapes. And you, once you do that, you can also still add shapes to your picture. That one had a little spot that messed up, so I just created another line with it that goes off the page. Okay, so remember you have options here. You can do the lines bumpy, you can do them smooth and curved, you can leave some areas of negative space, you can use any shapes on top of your lines that you want. And remember that your lines should extend. Anytime you do a line, it should come from the edge of the page and then eventually go off another edge of the page, or the same edge of the page. So you could go like this and then come back and go off the same edge, as long as it both sides go off the edge. Okay. And then next step, I'm going to go back to this original one that I had here. The next step is to create all the connections. Every single time a line or the line of a shape or just a neurographic line intersect, you have to round it out. So I'm going to take the skinny pen this time, and I'm going to create this, what kind of looks like webbing at every single intersection. This is the part that takes a lot of time. The lines and shapes are quick, but when you get to this point, the little intersections, there's so many of them, take a pretty long time. And the more lines you have, the more intersections you're going to have, and the more you're going to have to create all of these little webbing areas. And the first time I did this, I thought I was all done, and then I realized there were like a few spots that I missed, because by the time you get to the end of doing all these intersections, there's just so much of it that you have to search around to see which little intersections you missed. Okay, so you're going to use the skinny pen. It works. The reason why I'm not using the thicker pen to do these little intersections is because when I tried doing that, the first time I did this project, the lines just ended up too thick, and ended up making little bumps here along the lines that go between. And I just like, I think it's easier to create the webbing with the skinny pen. And then once you're done with that, you go back in with the thicker Sharpie to fill it in. So I'm not going to make the webbing and then every single time take the thicker Sharpie and fill it in, and then make the webbing and then fill it in. Instead, I'm just doing all the webbing all at the same time. Instead of switching back and forth between pens, it's going to be less frustrating and easier to just do the webbing with the skinny pen all over the picture, get that all done everywhere, then use the thicker Sharpie to go and fill in all these areas. Okay, this is going to take too long for me to do on this video to do every single intersection, but I want you to see how to do it. And then I'm going to show you, and it's not going to be finished at the end of the video, but that's fine. You get the point. You can also create, these are so far pretty small. You can make them bigger. So watch this one. See how this one's going to be quite bigger? You just go further out with the webbing, and then it's going to give you a much bigger connection or neuron. This is like the neurons of the brain, and that connection is going to be really big. So it's going to be interesting if you have some areas where these little connections, these intersections are small, and some where they're bigger. So keep that in mind as you're making your webbing, okay? So pretend like I finished the webbing at every single intersection. Obviously I did not because there's so much to do, but now I'm going back in with the thicker Sharpie and I'm just coloring in all those connections because it's easier to color in with the thicker Sharpie than it is with that skinny one. If you see any little spots like this little tail, I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I don't like that little tail sticking off. So what I do is I just go like this, make the line a little thicker, and it gets rid of that little spot anywhere you see little spots. Also, it's going to be interesting to have some of your lines be thin and some of your lines be thick, maybe even just in one section, like maybe just this part can be thicker, that part can be skinnier. So as you're doing filling in the webbing, you can also be changing the thickness of the lines, the connections between all of these neurons. All right, so you get the point. I haven't filled them all in yet, but that's how it's done. And I'm going to make a second video when it comes to time to start using the watercolor colored pencils, but that is it for now. And you're just going to keep working on this. It might take you one class period. It might take you more than one class period, just as long as you're working diligently during the period. It doesn't matter if it takes you one or two class periods. Just keep working diligently and it will get done. It does take time. Be patient.